Hey Star Wars fans, welcome to another episode of Star Wars Doctrine. I'm Cody Dastrup, and this is Clone Wars and Chill. Clone Wars and Chill is our Clone Wars Season 7 breakdown show, basically just discussing everything there is to discuss about each episode that comes out of Season 7 in the Clone Wars, which has been a lot of fun so far. Thank you guys for tuning in. Do appreciate the support a lot. The most recent episode we got was called Deal, No Deal, and this is episode 6 of the final season of Clone Wars. It starts off, we're the second episode into the Ahsoka arc, and it starts off with Ahsoka and Trace and Rafa. Trace and Rafa are the sisters, and Trace has begun to really become friends with Ahsoka. They've developed that trust, whereas Rafa still kind of doesn't like Ahsoka, doesn't really trust her, doesn't think she has their best interest in mind, and Rafa's kind of shady to begin with. But it starts off with Rafa saying she's got a job for them that's going to make them some money, and you can tell pretty much it's from the beginning it's going to be a shady job, and Ahsoka, I guess, goes along thinking she can hopefully help them stay out of trouble. But Trace, obviously just listens to her sister. Her sister's really controlling of her and pretty persuasive. The fortune cookie of this episode is mistakes are valuable lessons often learned too late. And it's very fitting, of course, as they all are to this episode, because lots of mistakes are made pretty much by every character, in that Rafa really makes the mistake of getting them involved to begin with this job, and Ahsoka makes the mistake of using the Jedi mind trick and it not working, and obviously Trace's biggest mistake was dropping the shipment in the first place, so we'll get into that. And this episode, like I said, it was a good episode, but definitely kind of didn't give me as much as what I was looking for. There was some fun little tidbits in there, but I just really want the story to progress and to go more, and it's just like so frustrating to me when we get to the end of the episode and I'm like, I just want more, and they are short, and that's definitely part of it. But some of the things I did like was Ahsoka does drop another Anakin reference when she's asked about where she learned all of her mechanic skills. Ahsoka replies, the Skywalker Academy, and obviously everyone watching probably was, we all got that, whereas Trace didn't, and just a fun callback, shows how much, even though she's away from the Jedi Order, that was her life, and Anakin was her family, and it's probably incredibly hard to go on living, without someone you spent almost every day with for the past however many years, and someone that you loved, cared about as an older brother. It's just very, it's very sad to see that she pretty much just has to almost go on pretending that she doesn't miss him, and that she doesn't miss the Order and everything like that. So it's definitely a fun little drop in right there, reference to Anakin, just like we got in the last episode. So as they're leaving Coruscant to go on this mission, they fly a little too close to the military flight lane, and we draws the attention of the Admiral, and we get to find out that Anakin's actually aboard the ship as well, which kind of makes me wonder what time frame this is taking place in, if he's back on Coruscant. And you get a very touching scene, which reminded me of quite a few different scenes, but Anakin essentially senses that Ahsoka's on that ship, and Ahsoka can feel that Anakin's on the ship. And it's actually scene for scene very, very much a resemblance of when Vader senses Luke coming into Endor on Return of the Jedi, and you can actually see frame for frame how similar these shots were. And I love how they do that with Star Wars and with these cartoons. Sometimes they mirror things, and like George Lucas's famous line, it's poetry, it rhymes, right? That's exactly what this was. But it also reminded me of when Ahsoka senses Vader later on in Rebels. You have a very similar facial expressions of them recognizing and sensing each other. So definitely hit the heartstrings, tugged at him right there. It was a little emotional to see that, and they would have been under arrest had Anakin not let them go. So for whatever reason, Anakin, whether he's just following the Force or just wants what's best for Ahsoka. Either way, it probably came down to his feelings because he's a very emotionally driven person. He decided to let them go, and thank goodness for that. Otherwise, well, actually, maybe not thank goodness because he ended up getting into trouble, but otherwise, Ahsoka, who knows what would have happened if they got arrested, but it would have been interesting to see. But it was so sad seeing Anakin and her being so close, and you just want them on screen together again. But anyways, they let the ship pass, and they carry on to go on this mission, which Rafa hasn't really told them about, and all of a sudden they start pulling up to Kessel, and Ahsoka obviously recognizes Kessel, which they're all wondering how she knows so much about everything. And she's obviously trying to keep her past of the being a Jedi a secret. But the thing that caught me off guard the most was that when we land on Kessel, it's incredibly nice. I was like, this isn't Kessel. This doesn't look like Kessel at all. And we're getting to see where the rich people who profit off of the mining and the spice and everything from Kessel live, and that makes sense. You would think the whole place isn't run down. There's obviously people who are profiting off of this. Kessel's known for having slaves and for, just being kind of a scummy world like that, but there's obviously people profiting off of it who are probably living really nice. So we do get to see that. It's the rich people, the rich side of Kessel. And later on in the episode, we get to where we see the Kessel that we all know from Solo and from video games and all of that stuff. So spice gets talked about a little bit more, which I thought was interesting. I always just thought spice itself was the drug, but it turns out it's actually something it's a substance that's used to be made into drugs. And apparently it also has medicinal purposes, which makes a lot of sense. So there's obviously a good front for the smugglers and the people who are selling this spice. Is people in Kessel, they can act like, oh, it's just for medicinal purposes, it's perfectly legal, when in reality, they're making money selling it for drugs. So it's kind of interesting to see the way it could be actually used for good, when obviously these people aren't doing that, but it was interesting to find that out and to learn a little bit more about spice itself. So they take the shipment and they're on their way to take it to the Pykes, which right when they said that, I was like, oh great, they're really getting themselves in deep with the Pykes. And Trace can't decide who to listen to. Ahsoka's pretty much saying this is a bad idea. Rafa's saying we got to do it. And so she just decides to dump the shipment because she's like, no one's touching my ship, and I just made the decision for you. And then finally Ahsoka and Rafa agree on how stupid that was, and they finally see eye to eye a little bit, because now they're indebted to the Pyke Syndicate with all this spice, and they took it from Kessel, and they're not going to get the payment, and so they're going to be, in a really bad situation, which reminds me a lot of Han Solo's situation. The difference was he dropped it because he got boarded, and he was afraid of getting legal trouble, whereas Trace just dropped it because she was being stupid and decided that they were kind of in too far at that point. They kind of had to do something. They could have done something a little more noble, but they needed to do something, because having nothing, that's just gonna get them into a lot of trouble. The Pyke Syndicate was part of Darth Maul's Shadow Collective in the Clone Wars, and so that's what really caught my eye at first. But I've been made aware that in the Son of Dathomir comic series, the Pykes actually abandoned the Shadow Collective. So whether they're aligned with Maul at this point or if they realigned with him, I'm not sure. But I originally thought that the Pyke Syndicate would be a really good way to reintroduce Maul into the story, and for them that could be how Ahsoka and her roundaboutly get connected again. But going forward, it'll be interesting to see what trouble they get themselves into with the Pyke Syndicate and with Kessel. We know obviously they're not going to be forgiving with all that money that was left unpaid. So Ahsoka tries using a Jedi mind trick, which I'm still not sure how Rafa and Trace didn't realize that she was using the Force. Maybe it's just because they haven't been around it, so they didn't really know. But it wasn't smart enough to trick all of the Pykes, and they barely are able to shut the doors on the ship and start to get away. But we know that it's not the end. We got plenty more to come from this arc We're only 2 episodes into it, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I guess it is kind of fun seeing the grimier underworld smuggler side of things. I do enjoy that, and we'll see how it kind of plays into the big picture. That's just my hope, though, is that it really will play into the big picture, because the side missions are fun, but I do like, especially with this being the last season of Clone Wars, I do like it to be something, each episode, to tie into the overall bigger picture. So that's been my only complaint so far with these last 2, is they're like kind of starter off episodes, but I thought by this one we'd maybe have a little more in-depth to the big full circle, the big full story of what's going on in the wars and in everything. But there's a time for that, and we'll get there, so I'm excited to see where it goes. Next week, I assume that we'll pick up where we left off and get them into more trouble. It's only a matter of time before Ahsoka's going to have to reveal she's a Jedi, because they're going to have some fights coming up, and I'm excited to see that. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for future Star Wars content. Next week I'll have next video up on episode 7, and we'll keep doing these, and we do appreciate your support. And until next time, may the Force be with you.